Hi everybody, and greetings to the new versions of lectures for Romans. Today we're going to be looking at Romans 1 through chapter 1, verses 1 through 17, where Paul presents his gospel. And on the one hand, there's a lot of theologically heavy material, which we'll be looking at. But we want to start by looking at this opening paragraph, because one of the goals of this class is to approach the book of Romans with fresh eyes, as though we were in the first century trying to imagine we're readers in Rome, and we hear this letter presented, read aloud to our little gathering, and we don't have 2,000 years of Christian history behind us, which has made these words full of connotations that they wouldn't originally have had. We want to try to hear the connotations and be surprised by what's surprising and notice what would be unlike a letter we might typically expect. So if we look at the first paragraph, we see that this book opens with some of the elements of a typical letter. A typical letter will have three elements. The name of the writer, we have that in verse 1, Paul. The name of the recipient, or recipients, and we have that verse 7. To all God's beloved in Rome. Think about what kind of a word beloved is, and if people would be used to being addressed that way. And then you expect the third element, a greeting, and we get that. Grace to you and peace. Now even there's a little bit of a variation by Paul, because normally a Greek letter would use the greeting chairein. That's the Greek word for greetings, or how are you going? And Paul, instead of using the word chairein, uses the Greek word charis for grace. But in any event, we can see that we have all three elements of a traditional Greek letter opening. What's surprising, and you can see this graphically in the next slide, what's surprising is that there's a lot of extra material between the right Paul and the name of the recipients. And in most of Paul's other letters, he hews pretty close to the traditional opening for a Greek letter. We do usually find his characteristic description of himself as a slave of Christ, as an apostle, and we find his characteristic use of grace and peace, or some variation on that. But Romans stands out from Paul's other letters. That is, Paul's other letters are a little bit unlike normal Greek letters, but Romans is even unlike Paul's other letters. None of his letters has anything like verses 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And what we want to think about, because we don't want to spend all day just talking about his greeting, but we want to notice that there is some unusual material here. Not only is it odd to have this addition, but he says some things in verses 3 and 4 which aren't quite common for him elsewhere. And it's possible that in this 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, he may already be giving some hint about the big themes of the whole book of Romans. So just to zoom in on a couple examples, we'll look at a challenging passage. If you think about some of Paul's main concerns in Romans, what strikes you about these extra comments he makes about God's gospel? Verse 2, which he promised beforehand through his prophets in the holy scriptures, the gospel, so there's repetition, concerning his son, who was descended from David according to the flesh. The theme in Romans that those additions would seem to prefigure is Paul's emphasis, his insistence that his gospel is consistent with what we come to call the Old Testament.